The Oregon rain hit the windshield like a barrage of pebbles. The wipers groaned under the weight of the storm, smearing mud across the cracked glass. Jack Reynolds squinted through the downpour, one hand gripping the steering wheel, the other clutching a crumpled piece of paper, the county auction receipt. The paper read, Lot number 34B, Pine Hollow, Oregon, 5 acres log structure, abandoned. Winning bid, $900. Every dollar he had left. Beside him, Emily sat in her booster seat, humming quietly to herself, clutching her stuffed rabbit. The rabbit's fur was matted and gray, one button eye missing, like everything else in their life worn, but still holding on. In the back seat, Max, a 7-year-old German shepherd, sat upright, ears, twitching eyes locked on the blurry tree line. He had the stillness of a soldier who'd seen too much and trusted too little. The road wound upward, narrowing with each turn, swallowed by the encroaching forest. Massive pines leaned inward, their moss-covered trunks glistening in the rain like sentinels guarding a secret. "Are we almost there, Daddy?" Emily asked, her voice small. Jack's throat tightened. God, I hope not, he thought. But out loud he said, "Almost, sweetheart. Just a few more minutes." The GPS had stopped working miles ago. The signal had died somewhere between "you've reached your destination" and absolute nowhere. The truck's heater coughed weakly. Jack's fingers ached from the cold. His reflection in the rearview mirror looked like a ghost, hollow eyes, silver-threaded hair at the temples, and that unmistakable wear of a man who'd fought wars both abroad and inside his own skull. He'd fought for his country. He hadn't expected the real battle to be coming home. PTSD bills, nightmares. His wife Laura killed in a car accident he still replayed every night. The insurance money was gone, swallowed by debt therapy and a handful of half-built dreams. Now all he had left was his daughter, his dog, and a truck that rattled every time he braked. When the email from the county appeared in his inbox, a foreclosure auction buried in bureaucracy, it felt like a last roll of the dice. A home, land, no landlord, no rent, just something that was his. He had spent sleepless nights debating. $900 was everything. Gas, food, insurance, all of it gone with one reckless bid. But when the auctioneer's gavel came down and the word "sold" echoed through the courthouse, something inside him had cracked open. For the first time in years, he'd felt hope. Now, as his headlights sliced through the rain and the trees thinned, he saw it, the faded wooden sign half swallowed by Vine's Pine Hollow Rod. "This is it," he whispered. Max let out a low growl from the back. Jack's pulse spiked. He glanced in the rearview mirror. "Easy, buddy." But Max wasn't looking at the road. His gaze was fixed out the passenger window, ears flat, a rumble deep in his throat. The driveway appeared suddenly, a gap in the brush, barely wide enough for the truck. Branches clawed at the sides as Jack turned in the wheels, grinding through mud. Then, through the curtain of rain, the cabin emerged. It stood hunched at the edge of a clearing, like a corpse refusing to fall. The logs were silver gray with rot. The roof sagged. Windows were dark holes rimmed with shards of glass. A rusted weather vane creaked in the wind. Jack killed the engine. The silence that followed was deafening. Emily's eyes widened. "Is that our new house?" Jack forced a smile, the kind that hurt to make. "Yeah, kiddo. It just needs a little love." She giggled. "It looks like it needs a lot of love." He exhaled, stepping out into the cold rain. The air was thick with pine and damp soil and something else, something metallic, old, like rust or blood. Max jumped down his paws, sinking into the wet earth. His body stiffened instantly. The hair along his spine rose like a storm surge. Max! The dog growled again, deeper this time, staring directly at the house. For a moment, Jack thought he saw movement in the upstairs window. A flicker. A shadow. But when he blinked, it was gone. He shook his head. You're tired, that's all. Ghosts don't live in real estate auctions. He opened the truck door for Emily. Come on, sweetheart. Let's take a look inside. Max stepped between them, blocking the path. He barked once, sharp, commanding. Max, Jack snapped. It's fine. But the dog didn't move. He was trembling now, nose pointed toward the porch, growl turning into something primal, urgent. Jack's hand went instinctively to his belt, where his service pistol used to hang. Empty. Just like his wallet. Okay, fine. You win, he muttered, grabbing the heavy flashlight from the seat. Stay with the truck, Max. He scooped Emily into his arms and stepped onto the porch. The wood groaned beneath his boots, sagging with each step. The door was unlocked. Of course it was. The moment it creaked open, a gust of stale air hit him, mold, animal musk, and something faintly sweet, like rotting fruit. Emily buried her face against his neck. It smells yucky. Jack coughed. That's just old air, baby. Been closed up too long. He shined the flashlight around the main room. Dust motes drifted like ghosts in the beam. Furniture draped in sheets. A stone fireplace blackened with soot. And silence. So much silence it felt alive. He set Emily down and knelt to check the floorboards. Solid enough. We'll start with the windows tomorrow, he said softly. Get this place breathing again. Emily nodded, twirling her rabbit by one ear. Jack turned to look back out the door and froze. Max was still outside, staring straight at him, hackles raised. His reflection in the rain-glossed porch boards looked like a warning carved in shadow. Thunder rolled over the valley. Jack's grip tightened on the flashlight. You're letting your imagination get the better of you. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that he hadn't just bought a house. He'd inherited something. He closed the door and leaned against it, breathing in the damp air. His muscles ached with exhaustion, but underneath the fatigue was a flicker of something else, resolve. This is it, kiddo, he said, forcing a smile again. No one can take this from us. Not ever. Emily smiled sleepily. Can Max have his own room? He chuckled. Sure, long as he stops acting like the house is gonna eat us. Outside, the rain intensified, hammering the roof in sheets. The old structure groaned like it was remembering something painful. Jack turned off the flashlight. The dark pressed in thick and close. He listened to the wind, to the creaks, to Max pacing outside, and somewhere beneath it all, something else. A faint sound, like breathing, from behind the fireplace. He froze, every nerve on edge. He turned the light back on, heart thudding, but saw nothing. Only the stone hearth cracked and soot-streaked silent. He exhaled shakily. Just the wind, he whispered. But Max barked sharply outside, once, twice, an urgent rhythm that made the hair on Jack's neck stand up. He strode to the door, yanked it open. Max! The dog's head snapped toward the tree line, eyes glinting in the beam of the flashlight. He growled low, deep feral. The forest beyond was pitch black. But somewhere in that darkness, something moved, slow, deliberate. Jack couldn't see it, but Max could. He shut the door fast, locking it this time. For a long moment he stood in the dark, Emily's soft breathing behind him, his pulse thundering in his ears. He whispered the words like a prayer or a curse. This is either the dumbest thing I've ever done, or the smartest. and as thunder shook the cabin again, a hollow echo answered from the fireplace, 3 faint knocks coming from inside the wall. The morning came cloaked in fog. Cold light seeped through the broken windows, catching in the dust that floated lazily in the air, like smoke from a long-dead fire. Jack sat on the edge of a collapsed armchair, boots still on hands clasped between his knees, staring at the hearth like it might speak again. Emily still slept, curled beneath an old quilt they found in a cedar trunk upstairs. Max sat beside her, alert and watchful, never blinking, his ears twitching at every groan the house made. He hadn't relaxed all night. Jack hadn't slept at all. The 3 knocks from the fireplace still echoed in his head. Maybe it had been the wind, or the stone settling, or something else, something he couldn't explain. He rose slowly, rubbing the stiffness from his neck. Rain still tapped on the roof, softer now. He walked quietly toward the fireplace. It was cold, built from uneven stone blocks blackened with soot and smoke stains. His fingers traced the cracks between the rocks. One stood out hairline but longer than the others, like it had been sealed recently. He pressed his palm against it. Nothing. He knelt, scanned the base. His breath fogged as he leaned closer. Max barked sharply behind him. He turned fast, heart racing. "What is it?" The dog was standing now, low growl rumbling in his throat, not aimed at Jack, but the front door. Jack crossed the room and opened it slowly. Nothing but fog and forest, pines cloaked in mist. The road vanished less than 20 feet away. Still, Max didn't relax. His gaze stayed locked on the woods, nose twitching like something in the air wasn't right. Jack stepped out onto the porch. Max doesn't growl unless something's wrong. "Dead wrong," he muttered. The forest was silent. No birdsong, no rustling of leaves, just stillness. Not peaceful, paralyzed, like the world was holding its breath. Max crept forward and sniffed near the steps. Jack followed, eyes scanning the wet ground. And there it was, just at the edge of the porch. A footprint, barely visible in the soft earth. Heavy boot tread. Fresh. Jack crouched, pressing 2 fingers to the edge of the print. The soil was still damp, compressed. Someone had stood right there. Watched them, maybe. Last night. His gaze lifted to the trees. They stood tall and silent, hiding whatever had passed through them. Max circled back, tail stiff, ear saws forward. Emily appeared in the doorway, rubbing her eyes. Daddy Jack stood, forcing his voice steady. "Morning, kiddo." She hugged herself, shivering. "It's cold. I don't like it here." He looked back at the house. "Yeah, I know." Back inside, he made a weak breakfast, instant oatmeal and bottled water. The well was off limits after last night. He'd need to test it before trusting a drop. Emily sat on the floor, spooning warm mush into her mouth, still wrapped in the quilt. Max stayed near her, ever watchful. After breakfast, Jack resumed inspecting the fireplace. This time he used a flashlight and his Leatherman tool. He tapped gently on each stone, listening. On the left side, one of the lower stones echoed slightly hollow. He pried at the seam. The stone resisted, then gave way with a quiet pop. Behind it, wrapped in a stiff yellowing cloth, was a small leather-bound notebook and something metallic. He pulled both out and unwrapped the cloth carefully. The notebook was brittle with age. The spine cracked slightly as he opened it. Handwriting filled the pages in tight, frantic lines. Names, dates, coordinates, notes scrawled in shorthand, and a name that made Jack's chest tighten: Nolan Pierce. He'd heard of him barely. a journalist who disappeared 20 years ago while investigating a major environmental scandal. No body ever found. No leads. Case frozen like the land it happened on. The metal object was an old-fashioned microcassette tape unlabeled. Jack stared at it, heart pounding. He didn't have a tape player. Not here. But maybe someone in town did. He packed the items back into the cloth, secured them in his pack. Emily looked up from the quilt. "What's that, Daddy?" He hesitated. "Just something someone left behind. Long time ago." She nodded like she understood everything and nothing all at once. He needed help, information. If this notebook was real, if this was really Nolan Pierce's notes, then this wasn't just about some creepy noises or bad water. This was something bigger. Jack drove into Pine Hollow that afternoon. The town was small, maybe 5 blocks total. A main street with a diner, a hardware store, a post office, and a library whose windows were so clean they looked invisible. He parked in front of the library. Max stayed in the truck with Emily, who had fallen asleep. The bell above the library door chimed softly. Inside smelled of old books and pine cleaner. A woman looked up from behind the desk. Mid-30s, dark curls pulled into a loose bun, horn-rimmed glasses perched low on her nose. She had that librarian look that said she knew everything but wouldn't tell you unless you asked politely. "Can I help you?" Jack stepped up, clearing his throat. "I'm looking for information on a journalist named Nolan Pierce." Her eyes narrowed. "That's a name I haven't heard in years. I think I found something that belonged to him. I just moved into the old Parker place. Lot 34B. Her expression changed, curiosity mixed with alarm. "You're the one who bought that land, yeah. I thought that place was condemned." It was. She studied him for a moment. "Follow me." She led him through the stacks to a side room, a reading nook with a small stereo system. She pulled open a drawer, retrieved a dusty micro-cassette player. "This work?" He nodded. He slid the tape and pressed play. At first static, then a voice shaking but clear. "If you're hearing this, they found me. I'm Nolan Pierce. The man who owns this land is a murderer. He's burying barrels of waste arsenic mercury worse on federal land. He's paying off everyone. I've documented it all. If I disappear, the evidence is in the ground. And God help whoever comes next." Jack's hand trembled slightly. The librarian Naomi pressed. "Stop." Her face was pale. "He was right," she said softly. "Boone owns half this town, has for years, but nobody talks, because talking gets you buried," Jack finished. Outside, thunder cracked. Max barked once, sharp and urgent, from the truck. Jack turned toward the door. "Something's happening," he said, "and I think it just started again." The rain had stopped by the time Jack got back to the cabin, but the forest didn't feel any lighter. The sky hung low with mist, turning every tree into a silhouette, every shadow into something watching. Emily was curled up in the passenger seat, Max pressed tight against her like a sentry. She stirred when Jack opened the driver's door. "Did you find the tape thingy?" she asked sleepily. Jack nodded. "Yeah, and a lot more." He didn't tell her what was on the tape. Not yet. How could he explain to a 5-year-old that the land she was playing on might be toxic, that the house they were sleeping in could be built on top of someone's grave? He carried her inside, Max following silently. Jack set his daughter on the couch, tucked the quilt around her, then walked straight to the kitchen, flipping open the notebook with shaking hands. Most of the pages were smeared and stained. The writing, once neat and sharp, grew more erratic the deeper he read. Nolan Pierce had been unraveling when he wrote this. Whether it was fear or paranoia or truth, Jack couldn't tell yet. Names filled the margins. Boone's name appeared dozens of times, always underlined. Boone moving barrels again. Sheriff in pocket. Won't touch it. Parker land compromised, well test shows arsenic. Found voice, she knows too much. If someone went through this much trouble to hide it, it was never meant to stay buried. That line hit him like a punch. Nolan hadn't just been scared. He'd been hunted. Jack looked up, scanning the quiet room. The hearth, the cracked ceiling, the air heavy with silence. It all felt different now, like a crime scene in disguise. Max paced near the front window, ears on high alert. Jack pulled out his phone and took pictures of the most legible pages. He didn't trust that the notebook would last long. He didn't trust much of anything anymore. The last entry was dated July 16th, 20 years ago, the day before Nolan had vanished. The well is the key. If I disappear, they'll bury me like the rest. Jack's gaze shifted toward the back window, where the old well stood like a rotting tooth in the ground. The wooden frame sagged. The bucket was long gone, but the rope still hung frayed and dark. He stood and walked outside, Max glued to his side. The air was thick with pine and decay. Every footstep squished into the earth. He stopped at the edge of the well, looking down. It was deeper than he expected. Darker, too. The stone lining was wet, streaked with something that smelled metallic. He grabbed a small rock and dropped it. No splash, just a dull thunk. Max growled again, ears pinned back. Jack knelt beside the well, peering deeper. There was something about it, something wrong. It didn't smell like water. It smelled like rusted iron and old sickness. He stood abruptly. Back inside, Emily was on the floor with her rabbit, humming a quiet song to herself. "Did you go to the wishing well?" she asked, tilting her head. Jack froze. "What?" she shrugged. "That's what the lady called it." "What lady?" Emily pointed toward the stairs. "She said not to drink the water." She was sad. Jack's skin went cold. He bolted up the stairs 2 at a time. Empty. The upstairs was empty, just the bedroom with the cedar trunk and the cracked mirror. No sign of anyone. He checked every room, every closet. Nothing. Back downstairs, Emily was coloring in a notebook with one of the old pencils they found in a drawer. Jack knelt beside her. "Sweetheart, did the lady say anything else?" Emily nodded. "She said the bad man put poison in the ground. She had black stuff on her hands." Jack tried to keep his voice calm. "Did she tell you her name?" "No." Emily looked up, serious. "She said she used to live here." Jack's hands tightened around the edge of the couch. He didn't believe in ghosts. Not really. But he believed in trauma. And he believed children saw what adults had been trained to ignore. That night he called Naomi from the cabin porch. The signal was weak, the wind cutting through the trees like whispers. "You said you'd heard the name Nolan Pierce," Jack began. "What about anyone else, anyone who lived out here, maybe disappeared?" There was a pause. "You might want to talk to Martha Quinn. She's lived in Pine Hollow forever. Retired now, but she was a nurse. Treated a lot of people out near that land." Jack made a note. "Can you meet me in the morning? I'll be at the library." "Don't go back to that well," Naomi added. "Just don't." The call dropped. Jack stared at the tree line until the phone went black. The next morning, he and Emily drove into town again. Max restless in the back seat. The moment they parked, a woman stepped off the diner's porch and waved him down. late 60s, long gray braid, eyes like river stones. "You're the vet who bought the Parker land," she said, not asking. Jack nodded. "Jack Reynolds. You're Martha Quinn." She nodded once. "You brought your daughter to that place. It's all I could afford. You should have asked why it was so cheap." Jack's throat tightened. "I'm asking now." They sat across from each other in a corner booth at the diner. Emily sat with Max outside, feeding him fries through the open window. Martha stirred her tea slowly. There was a girl, Clara May Parker, 25. Lived alone. I used to see her when I was doing rounds for home care. Sweet girl but sick. Bad lungs. She always blamed the water. Jack leaned forward. "What happened to her? She disappeared." "A few days after the 4th of July, 2003. Sheriff claimed she ran off, but her mother said she'd never leave without her dog, and the dog was still on the porch." Jack felt the blood drain from his face. Her mother died a year later. Alone. Heartbroken. The sheriff closed the file. "But folks around here, we remember." "Did she ever mention Nolan Pierce?" Martha nodded slowly. "He used to visit. Said he was writing a story. Said Boone was poisoning the ground. Clara was helping him collect water samples. After she vanished, he stopped coming. Then he vanished too." Jack felt the weight in his chest shift into something cold and sharp. He looked out the window at Emily, who was now laughing, Max licking her hand. "They were killed," he said, "for trying to tell the truth." Martha reached into her purse and slid a folded piece of paper across the table. "I kept this, just in case someone ever came asking." It was a map, the property. Several red X's marked around the forest. One circled labeled in shaky handwriting, North Ridge Stone Ring. Jack looked up. "What's there?" Martha's voice was low. Whatever Nolan was trying to show the world. The forest was quiet that morning. Too quiet. Jack had hiked nearly an hour from the edge of his property, climbing the incline marked on the map Martha Quinn gave him. The trail twisted and narrowed, then vanished altogether, swallowed by ferns and fallen branches. The deeper he went, the more the silence pressed against his ears. No birdsong, no rustling. Just the crunch of his boots and the steady breathing of Max trotting ahead, nose to the ground. Emily had stayed behind with Martha. She didn't like the woods. "The trees don't like me," she had said without blinking. Jack hadn't asked what she meant. He paused at the base of the ridge, catching his breath. Max stopped, tail low, head lifting. Jack followed the dog's gaze to a ring of stones jutting from the earth like ancient teeth. The formation was unnatural, too perfect, too symmetrical to be chance. In the center, the ground was darker, sunken, like something had once been dug up or buried. Max let out a low whine, then began pawing at the center of the ring. Jack dropped to one knee. The soil was loose, recently disturbed. He began digging with his hands, dirt packing under his fingernails, heart hammering harder with each scoop. After several minutes, his knuckles hit something solid metal, cold and rusted. A latch. He brushed away the last layer of dirt and pulled. The box groaned as it came free, a military-style waterproof case, dented and weathered but intact. He popped it open. Inside were papers sealed in plastic, a roll of undeveloped film, and a thick cassette tape labeled in shaky handwriting, Boone Evidence Final Copy. Jack exhaled slowly. This was it. This was the kind of evidence that could burn everything down. Behind him, a twig snapped. He turned fast, heart in his throat. Nothing. Max's ears shot up. He turned toward the slope. Another snap, closer. Jack grabbed the case, tucked it under one arm, and whispered, "We need to move. Now." They backtracked through the woods faster this time. Max stayed close alert, glancing back every few steps. Jack didn't run, running made noise, but every fiber of him screamed that someone was following them. The silence returned, but it felt heavier now, intentional. They made it back to the truck parked near the old logging trail. Jack threw the case into the back seat and slid into the driver's seat, Max already beside him. As he pulled onto the main road, he glanced in the rearview mirror and saw movement. Just beyond the tree line, a figure, watching. Jack's gut twisted. Whoever they are, they know I have it. Back at the cabin, Jack set the case on the kitchen table. Emily came running from the bedroom, her face lighting up. "You're back." He caught her mid-leap, holding her tight. "I'm back," he said, breathing her in. "Everything okay here?" She nodded, then touched his cheek. "You smell like the woods." "I was in the woods." "Did you see the shadow people?" Jack paused. "What?" She looked serious. "They stand between the trees and whisper. But you can't hear them unless you're quiet, like Max." Jack forced a smile. "Well, I had Max with me." He didn't whisper. She giggled and ran back to her rabbit. Jack's smile faded. He needed to listen to the tape, but he wasn't going to do it alone. That night he drove back to town. Naomi met him at the library again, this time in a back room with the door locked. "You weren't followed?" she asked. "I don't think so," he replied, though he wasn't sure. He set the cassette on the table between them. Naomi stared at it like it might detonate. "Are you sure you want to hear this?" she asked. Jack nodded. They buried the truth, right along with him. Naomi loaded the tape into the player. The static was louder this time. A low hum filled the room. Then a voice, Nolan Pierce's, cracked and close to breaking. "They've started moving the barrels again, south side of the ridge. I have photos, contracts, a payment trail. Boone's name is on every page. He's using shell companies, but the signatures match. The sheriff's in on it. They threatened Clara. She refused to stop. They poisoned her well, her land. I found levels of mercury so high, Jesus, it should have killed half the valley. She's dead. I know she is. I don't know where they put her. If you find this, bring it to the press. Bring it to someone who can't be bought. Don't let them erase us." Jack leaned back in his chair, his hands shaking. Naomi didn't speak for a long time. Finally, she whispered, "They did erase him. All of them." "Not anymore," Jack said. She pulled out a folder and slid it across the table. "I pulled the property records. The Parker land wasn't always Boone's. He acquired the mineral rights 5 years before Nolan disappeared through a proxy company. Same one that signed off on 2 environmental waivers that never should have cleared." Jack's mind raced. "You think the barrels are still here? I think they never left. They just got covered up." He sat forward. "Can you develop old film? I have the gear in the archive room," she said. "But it'll take a day." "Do it," Jack said. "I'll come back tomorrow." Back at the cabin, the air felt thicker. Emily was already asleep. Max curled beside her. Jack sat at the table, notebook, open documents spread before him. His world, what little control he had over it, was unraveling fast. He read and reread Nolan's notes. There were photos, chemical reports, payoffs. One name kept surfacing, circled over and over in angry pen strokes: Wesley Boone. Jack didn't just want him exposed. He wanted him destroyed. The next morning, Emily woke up coughing. Not a light cough, deep and raw, tearing through her like broken glass. Her cheeks were flushed, eyes watery. He rushed to her, heart pounding. "Sweetheart." She clung to him, eyes glassy. My tummy hurts. He felt her forehead. Burning. Jack's blood turned to ice. He looked at the kitchen counter where the water jug sat. They'd run out of bottled water the night before. He'd filled a pot from the old well to boil pasta. He hadn't even thought. He grabbed the jug and dumped it in the sink. Max barked sharply at the door. Jack turned. A dark SUV was crawling down the road toward the house, its engine barely audible. Someone was coming. He scooped Emily up in his arms and backed away from the windows. Outside, tires rolled to a stop on gravel. He looked at Max. The dog was rigid, ready. Jack whispered, "Get ready to run." He peeked through the curtain. A man in a gray suit stepped out of the SUV, his shoes too clean for this place. Eyes scanning the cabin like he already owned it. He didn't knock. He just stood there, waiting. Jack's fists clenched. Whoever this was, he wasn't here to talk. Jack opened the door only halfway, keeping his body square in the frame like a wall. Max pressed tight to his leg, a low growl vibrating in his chest. Emily lay on the couch behind them, flushed and still a damp washcloth on her forehead. The man in the gray suit smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. He was clean-cut, mid-40s, skin too smooth for a man who'd ever worked a day in the dirt. His shoes shone even on the muddy gravel. He didn't blink. "Mr. Reynolds," the man said coolly. "Name's Henderson. I represent Pine Hollow Holdings. We're here to offer you a buyout." Jack didn't move. Not selling. Henderson's smile twitched. "Of course you'd say that most folks do at first. But I think once you hear the number, you'll see we're not here to waste your time." Jack glanced past him at the SUV. Two men still sat inside, tinted windows rolled up. No one else around. No plate on the front bumper. Government, private, hard to tell. "You didn't come all the way out here to give me a business card," Jack said flatly. "So let's stop pretending this is about money." Henderson's tone sharpened just enough to cut. "Sometimes money is the only thing keeping people alive, Mr. Reynolds." Jack's knuckles whitened against the edge of the door. "You threatening my daughter?" A pause, then a slight chuckle. "Not at all. Just making sure you understand the value of peace and privacy." Max let out a bark, short and fierce. Henderson didn't flinch. "That dog's got good instincts. He's not the one you should worry about." Henderson's smile vanished. "We know what you found," he said quietly. "The tape, the notebook, that ridiculous little time capsule in the forest." Jack's pulse spiked. "Here's what's going to happen," Henderson continued. "You're going to take the buyout. We'll make sure your daughter gets the medical help she needs. You leave. You forget." Or he glanced toward the cabin. "We stop being friendly." Jack stared him down. "If Boone thinks sending a slick-talking middleman's going to scare me off, he forgot what kind of man I am." "No," Henderson said, turning to go. "He knows exactly what kind of man you are. That's why he sent me." As the SUV pulled away, Jack stood on the porch long after the dust settled. The birds still hadn't returned. The forest felt like it was holding a secret in its breath. Inside, Emily stirred and coughed violently, her small body racked by the sickness. Jack gathered her gently into his arms and whispered, "Hang on, baby girl." He drove straight to Naomi's place. She opened the door in a hurry and took one look at Emily before pulling them both inside. "She needs a hospital," Naomi said, touching Emily's forehead. "This is serious." "I can't take her to the Pine Hollow Clinic," Jack said. "Boone owns it. Who knows what kind of doctor's on his payroll?" Naomi frowned. There's a woman outside of town, Dr. Elise Monroe, retired early. Used to work environmental medicine whistleblower type. She'll help if she's still alive. Jack didn't hesitate. Give me the address. 2 hours later, Jack was knocking on a rusted trailer door in the middle of a clearing, surrounded by wild blackberry bushes and broken wind chimes. The door opened an inch, and a voice called, "Who sent you, Naomi?" from the Pine Hollow Library. She said you might help my daughter. The door opened wider, revealing a woman in her 60s. Wiry gray hair, lab coat over denim, eyes like X-rays. Bring her inside. Don't touch anything. Dr. Monroe's trailer was packed with books, microscopes, and equipment that looked salvaged from 3 different decades. She laid Emily on a worn cot and immediately began examining her. Fever's dangerously high, she muttered. What's she been drinking? Jack swallowed. I filled a pot from the well. Monroe froze. The old wells around Pine Hollow are hot zones. Mercury arsenic industrial sludge from the Boone operation. You may as well have fed her battery acid. Jack's stomach dropped. I didn't know. It was one time. One time's enough. Her body's small. Her liver can't handle that kind of toxic load. Can you help her? Monroe didn't answer right away. She moved to a shelf, grabbed a vial, drew something into a syringe. This is chelation therapy. It's not perfect, but it might flush enough out of her system to stop the damage. She injected Emily slowly. Jack held her tiny hand the whole time, whispering promises he wasn't sure he could keep. Finally, Monroe stood. She needs clean water, rest, and a miracle. Jack looked at her. You used to fight this, didn't you? I still do, she said. But no one listens anymore. They either take the money or they disappear. I have evidence. From Nolan Pierce. Photos. A confession. She raised an eyebrow. Then you better burn it into the world fast before Boone burns you first. That night back at the cabin, Jack couldn't sleep. He paced while Max sat at the window watching the tree line like a soldier waiting for gunfire. Jack opened the metal case again, spread the photos across the floor, printed forms, dates, payments, maps, Boone's signature, and Clara May Parker's name on water test reports, each worse than the last. A handwritten note from Nolan in the corner read, If Boone's operation is a body, the well is its heart. Cut the artery and the truth will bleed. Jack stared at it for a long time. Suddenly Max growled. Jack looked up. The air felt wrong again. He stepped to the window and froze. The woods were glowing, a faint orange flicker. Then another. And another. Like fireflies, but wrong. Chemical. And in the distance, just past the old logging trail, flames. Not wildfire. Controlled. Targeted. The ridge. Jack bolted out the door, flashlight in hand, Max charging ahead. By the time they reached the ridge, the ring of stones was gone, blackened earth in its place. The cache he had dug up. Torched. Everything. They burned the site. Jack fell to his knees, staring at the scorched ground. Ash still floated in the air. Max paced in tight circles, whining. Someone had followed him, watched him, waited until he left the evidence unguarded. And now it was gone. All of it. But they made one mistake. They lit the match too soon. The sky over Pine Hollow had turned heavy, smeared in gray like a bruise across the mountains. Jack stood inside the library's archive room, the old cassette player still warm from last night's playback. Papers were scattered across the table, his only surviving copies of what Boone's men hadn't burned. Naomi was late. She was never late. He checked his phone again. Still no response. No calls. No texts. Just a quiet, creeping silence that had settled into his gut and curled up like something that knew it wasn't going away. Jack turned to the microfilm reader, clicking through local newspaper archives from the early 2000s. Naomi had started pulling them for him, articles Nolan might have referenced. But now Jack was on his own. He paused on a grainy photo from a 2003 piece, local activist still missing. Clara May Parker. Her face young, open, stubborn. Beneath the image, the text hinted at mental health issues, domestic drama, possible self-imposed disappearance. Jack could smell the spin right through the page. She hadn't disappeared. She'd been silenced. And now Naomi might be next. He stuffed the papers into a manila folder, tucked it under his arm, and left the library. Max trotted beside him, alert. The town felt thinner somehow, vacant storefronts, closed blinds, people glancing out windows but not opening their doors. Pine Hollow wasn't just dying. It was hiding. Jack made one stop before leaving town, the payphone outside Miller's Gas and Tackle. It was rusted and sun-bleached, the kind of relic most people ignored. But Jack had memorized the number from a story Naomi once told him about a journalist in Salem, someone still hungry for the truth. He dropped a quarter in the slot and punched the number. 2 rings. Then a voice, sharp and tired, Trujillo. "This is Jack Reynolds. I've got evidence on Wesley Boone's illegal dumping in Pine Hollow. Photos, contracts, recordings. I need help." A pause. "You with the girl?" Jack blinked. "What, you the one with the daughter that got sick?" "My source said someone kicked a hornet's nest down there." Jack's grip tightened on the receiver. "I need someone who isn't afraid to print what I send them. Are you that person?" Another beat. "Then email me everything you've got. I'll meet you halfway. I've got a satellite rig and a burner laptop. We'll publish offshore. They can't touch it." Jack gave her the burner number. "Tonight. Don't be late." When he returned to the cabin, the mailbox had been ripped from the ground, torn out and left lying open like a corpse. Inside was a single Polaroid. Naomi, tied to a chair, gagged, eyes wide. A note was scribbled across the bottom in thick black ink. "Stop, or she dies next." Max growled low and guttural. Jack scanned the tree line. No movement, no footprints. But they'd been here. They were watching. Jack stepped inside, locked the door behind him, and pulled all the curtains. Emily sat at the kitchen table, drawing with her crayons. Her fever had broken, but she looked tired, like her body was still fighting something bigger than just illness. "What are you drawing?" he asked, trying to steady his voice. She held up the page. A house with smoke rising, trees burning, a figure in the woods with no face. Jack crouched. "Who's that?" She pointed to the faceless figure. "The man who took the lady." His stomach dropped. "You saw him," she nodded. "He was standing in the trees when you were gone." Jack kissed her forehead. "Go pack your bunny. We're going on a trip." That night, Jack met Hannah Trujillo at a roadside diner an hour outside Pine Hollow. She was younger than he expected, maybe early 30s, combat boots and a leather jacket, her hair pulled back into a messy knot. "You brought the files?" she asked. He nodded, handing over the folder. "This is everything that wasn't burned." She flipped through the pages, eyes narrowing. Boone's signature. Toxicology reports. "This is a kill shot. I need Naomi found. And Boone exposed." "You'll get both," she said. "But not from here. We publish out of Mexico. My contact runs a secure press server. Can't be shut down." Jack's mind raced. What about Naomi? I'll put someone on it, she said. I know people who specialize in disappearances. Jack looked away. They threatened my daughter. They always do, she replied almost gently. That's how they keep people small. Back at the cabin, Jack spent the night scanning and uploading every single document he had left. Max barked once around midnight, something outside. Jack grabbed his rifle, stepped onto the porch. A dead bird lay on the steps. Its eyes burned out. Jack stood there, rifle steady, daring the dark to move. Nothing did. Inside, the signal blinked green. Files uploaded. Sent. He shut the laptop and stood over Emily, who slept with her hand curled around Max's collar. He whispered to no one. This town isn't dead. It's scared. The next morning, he received a message from Hannah. Publishing now. Going live in 4 hours. But then another ping came through. A video file. He opened it. Naomi. Same chair, same warehouse. But this time she was conscious. A voice off camera asked, "Who gave you the files?" She shook her head, blood on her lip. The voice snapped, "Who else knows?" She whispered something. Jack rewound it. "Turn the volume up." She said, "Everyone will know." Then the feed cut. Jack stared at the black screen. They'd gone too far. It wasn't just about land anymore, or poison, or greed. It was about silencing anyone who dared to speak. He called Hannah. "We go wide, TV, press, social, public record. Dump it all." "Already in motion," she said. "But you better disappear. Boone's going to lose everything. He won't take it quietly." Jack looked out the window. A black pickup was parked just beyond the tree line. Engine idling. Watching. They're already here. Jack didn't sleep. He sat by the window, rifle across his lap, Max curled at his feet. The black pickup that had idled at the edge of the woods the night before was gone by sunrise, but not before Jack memorized the shape of the grille and the missing headlight on the driver's side. He'd seen that truck before. Weeks ago, outside Miller's tackle. They weren't just watching. They were circling. Emily slept through the night for the first time in days. Her fever had eased, but Jack didn't trust it. Not after what she'd ingested. He couldn't trust the water, the land, or the air. Everything around them was compromised, poisoned. He filled a new jug from the emergency stash of bottled water just in case. The last thing he needed was another mistake. He stepped outside Max at his side and walked to the well again. It sat like a festering wound, cracked wood, black mold, creeping up the frame, the rope dangling into darkness. Jack didn't need a lab report to know something evil lived in that pit. He dipped a long stick into the well and brought it up. The end was slick with green sludge. The smell, sweet, metallic, wrong, hit him immediately. He gagged and tossed the stick aside. Max barked once and trotted to the nearby water bucket he used to drink from. He sniffed it, growled, and then knocked it over with his paw. Jack's stomach clenched. They were still poisoning it. He knelt down and pried up a corner of the wooden well frame. Underneath, a thin pipe snaked into the ground, metal but new, recently laid. It wasn't just the old water. Someone had redirected something into the source. Artificial, hidden, and still active. He stood quickly scanning the forest. Whoever did this, he muttered, didn't just poison the land. They poisoned our right to live. He couldn't wait for the press to finish their work. He needed someone who knew the back roads, the terrain, the shortcuts through the red tape. He needed Tommy Vega. Jack packed Emily and Max into the truck and drove out toward the logging trails where he'd last seen him, way out past Pine Hollow's southern border, where the pines grew thicker and the satellite signal vanished. Tommy's shack was exactly as Jack remembered it, patched up siding, solar panels, and a hand-painted sign that read, "Keep out unless you're bringing coffee or ammo." Jack honked once. From inside, a grizzled voice shouted, "You better not be a recruiter or a Bible thumper." Jack smiled faintly. "It's Reynolds." There was a pause. Then the door opened. Tommy Vega stepped out in a tattered hoodie boots, unlaced cigarette hanging from his lips. His beard had grown wild, but his eyes were sharp as ever. "Jack freakin' Reynolds," Tommy muttered. "I figured you were dead or back overseas." Neither, Jack said. "I need your help." Tommy glanced at Emily, who waved from the truck. Then he looked at Max, then back at Jack. "This a bring a shovel situation, or a load your gun one," both Jack said. Inside, Jack laid everything on the table. The photos, the tape copies, the videos of Naomi and the Polaroid. Tommy read in silence, jaw tightening. "So Boone's still running his little empire of poison," Tommy said finally. "Even after all these years, he's worse now. He's quieter, richer, and more protected." "You know this ain't just local anymore," Tommy said. "If he's got distribution pipes, he's got friends in the county office. Hell, maybe state level. I need to prove the water's still tainted and get it tested independently. I can't trust local labs." Tommy tapped a cigarette on the edge of the table. "I know a guy in Eugene, retired EPA. Owes me a favor. He can run a full panel, no questions asked." Jack nodded. "Let's take samples from the well, the stream, and the water tower outside town." Quietly. "I've still got the ATV," Tommy said, grinning. "This'll be just like recon in Fallujah, only with more trees and less screaming." That afternoon, they returned to Jack's property. Tommy with his field kit and a faded green duffel full of collection vials. Emily stayed inside with Max, watching cartoons on Jack's old laptop. Jack and Tommy worked fast, masking up, pulling water from every known source. The well, the nearby creek, the rain-catch basin. What scared Jack most wasn't the samples. It was how familiar the contamination smelled now. They were just finishing when Jack noticed fresh tire marks in the dirt road that hadn't been there when they arrived. He followed them around the bend and froze. His truck sat skewed on the shoulder door ajar. Emily's crayon drawing lay on the seat. But no Emily. Jack sprinted. She was gone. "Emily," he roared into the woods. Max bolted out of the cabin and ran toward the trail. Jack followed, heart pounding so hard he could barely breathe. Max barked furiously at a thicket. Jack dove through it, and there she was, tucked in a hollow between two trees, her arms around her bunny, trembling. He dropped to his knees and scooped her up. "Are you hurt? Are you okay?" She clung to him, sobbing. A man came to the window. Max barked. "I ran. Just like you said." Jack held her tight. "You did perfect, sweetheart. You did exactly right." Tommy arrived moments later, eyes scanning the woods. "No sign of him," he said. "But that wasn't a random scare. They're escalating." Back at the cabin, Jack checked the truck. The brake line had been cleanly cut. "You'd have gone off the cliff coming back into town," Tommy muttered. "They're not even being subtle anymore." "They don't have to be," Jack said. "They think no one's coming." He looked down at Emily's drawing on the seat. This one was different. The house was still burning, but now there was a river of black under it, and in the center a skeleton holding a barrel. Jack's throat went dry. "Tommy," he said, "we're not just dealing with old toxins. They're still dumping, still active." Tommy nodded. Then we need to hit him where it hurts. Jack turned to him. Where's Boone's main office downtown Salem? Top floor of the Commonwealth Tower. Jack's jaw clenched. Then we're going there next. The drive to Salem was quiet, too quiet for two men preparing to storm the heart of a corporate empire. Jack sat behind the wheel, hands tight on the steering wheel, eyes fixed on the road ahead. Tommy Vega rode shotgun, thumbing through a small leather notebook packed with addresses, names, and back doors from his old surveillance days. Emily had been left in safe hands. Naomi's cousin Maria had agreed to take her to the coast for a few days, far from the toxic ground and the eyes of Boone's people. Jack didn't like being away from her, but this was the only way to finish what he'd started. You know, Tommy said, breaking the silence, Boone built that tower like it was a damn castle. Full floor access, retina scans, soundproof boardrooms. Whole top floor's his personal domain. Jack nodded. We're not going in loud. Of course not. Tommy smirked. We're ghosts. You remember how to be a ghost, right? Jack gave a tight smile. Better than I remember being a dad. They arrived in Salem just after noon. The Commonwealth Tower was a gleaming monolith of glass and steel, its mirrored windows reflecting a sky too clean for what hid inside. Jack parked in a garage 2 blocks away. They carried nothing suspicious, just laptops, messenger bags, and forged ID badges that Tommy had printed the night before. Boone's corporate records division, under the shell company, Cascade Environmental Holdings, occupied the 19th floor. Tommy had managed to snag a temp contractor pass from a former contact on the inside. It wouldn't hold forever, but it would get them through the initial checkpoint. In the elevator, as the numbers ticked upward, Jack's heart pounded against his ribs. This works, Tommy muttered. We crack the archive server, pull the permit logs, the redirected chemical invoices, everything Boone's tried to bury. Jack stared ahead. We get in, get the files, get out. No detours. The elevator chimed. Floor 19. They stepped into a quiet hallway, lined with frosted glass offices and hushed voices. No one looked up. Corporate anonymity was their cloak. Jack's badge buzzed green against the secure door. Inside, rows of filing cabinets met sleek server towers humming in cold silence. Tommy headed straight for the digital archive terminal. Watch the hall, he said. This is going to take me a minute. Jack posted near the door, keeping an eye on the few cubicles where workers typed away, none the wiser that 2 veterans were about to blow the lid off their employer's criminal empire. Minutes passed. Then, got it, Tommy whispered. Encrypted server nodes mapped. He's been shuffling waste disposal contracts through fake facilities, places that don't even exist. Look at this, he's rerouting toxic loads as clean fill and logging them as gravel deliveries. Jack leaned in. Every signature on these files matches Boone's, Tommy said. But here's the kicker, he's laundering them through a state environmental grant. The government's been paying him to poison us. Jack's jaw clenched. Can we copy it? Already downloading. But there's a firewall on the top-level files. I need a physical key, probably in his private vault. We don't need everything, Jack said. Just enough to sink him. Tommy smirked. Always the Marine. Minimum force, maximum damage. Suddenly the lights flickered. Then the door beeped. Someone was coming in. Jack motioned to Tommy. They ducked behind a pillar just as a tall man in a blue suit entered, talking loudly on his phone. No, I don't care what the EPA says, Boone signs the check. I sign the form, we move the barrels. If the town wants clean water, they can bottle it themselves. He paused at a desk and typed in a passcode at the master console. Jack mouthed to Tommy, "Get that code." Tommy's phone was already aimed, silently recording. The man finished his call and left as quickly as he came. "Got the code," Tommy whispered. "We're in." They returned to the console, bypassed the lock, and the final folder opened. Inside signed approvals, chemical manifests, transport schedules, drone photos of new dumping sites. But one document caught Jack's eye. It was a transfer order for Naomi Parker, labeled Asset Containment Transfer. Destination 782 Grantham Facility. A timestamp. Today, in less than 3 hours. Jack felt the blood drain from his face. "They're moving her." Tommy looked up. "We don't have time to finish pulling files." "Then we take what we've got," Jack said. "We go get her." They downloaded the final logs to an encrypted drive, shut down the terminal, and moved fast. Back in the garage, Jack slid behind the wheel engine already running. Tommy loaded the gear. "You know where that facility is?" Jack asked. Tommy nodded. Grantham was an old Cold War comms site. Boone bought it 10 years ago. Fenced it off. Locals call it the Vault. How far? 40 minutes. Maybe 30 if you drive like you used to. Jack grinned grimly. "Buckle up." They peeled out of the garage, tires screeching against the pavement. The drive was all adrenaline and silence. Jack's mind raced. Naomi had risked everything to help him. She believed in the truth. Now she was being treated like cargo, an asset to be transferred or erased. Not on his watch. They turned off the main road onto a gravel stretch flanked by thick forest. Razor wire fences came into view, followed by floodlights and a small gatehouse. "We're not getting through that gate without drawing heat," Tommy muttered. Jack scanned the perimeter. "We won't use the gate." They drove another mile, ditched the truck, and cut through the woods on foot. Max, who'd been riding quietly in the back seat, jumped out and took point, his nose to the ground. They reached the back fence, old, rusted, less watched. Tommy pulled out a pair of bolt cutters. "Never leave home without 'em." They slipped through the opening and crouched behind a shed. In the distance, a black van idled near a loading dock. Inside, 2 men dragged a woman toward the doors. It was Naomi. Jack moved before he even thought, low and fast. One guard lit a cigarette. The other pulled a clipboard from the van. Jack came up behind him, grabbed his arm, twisted, and slammed him into the side of the vehicle. Tommy charged the second man, dropping him with a clean elbow to the jaw. Naomi slumped in their arms, too weak to speak, but awake. "Gotcha," Jack whispered, cutting her bindings. "You're okay now." She shook her head. "No. You have to stop them. They're moving the chemicals tonight, new site north of Pine Hollow. They're burying it again." Jack helped her to her feet. "We're done playing defense." Thunder cracked overhead as Jack secured the final strap over the drone case in the truck bed. The storm was closing in, fast wind, whipping through the trees like it was trying to pull secrets from the forest itself. Naomi sat in the back seat, still pale, a fresh bandage on her temple. Tommy loaded the second camera rig beside her, locking it in with military precision. "This is it," Jack said, checking his watch. "They move the barrels tonight. Sharp. North Ridge logging site. If we miss it, Boone erases everything." Tommy nodded. "That EPA contact you trust better show. We're about to go loud." Jack looked to Naomi. She gave a weak nod. "You have to get them on record. Make them speak. Boone's power isn't just money. It's silence. Break that, and he falls." Hannah had already prepped her publication to go live the second the footage dropped. The leak was ready, the files were uploaded, and a dozen freelance activists were watching from burner accounts across the country. The plan was dangerous. Expose the dump live. Force a confrontation. broadcast everything. Jack slid into the driver's seat. Max hopped in beside him. The dog hadn't barked since Naomi had been rescued. He just watched. Waited. They reached the ridge by 8:35. Tommy deployed the drone while Jack positioned the truck just inside the tree line. The lights on the ridge were already on. 2 semi-trucks idled near massive tarp-covered pits. Workers moved quickly wearing private contractor uniforms. No markings. No logos. Boone wasn't there yet, but his name was on everything. Jack adjusted the radio mic on his collar. "Naomi, you copy?" Her voice crackled in his ear. "Loud and clear. Drone live in 90 seconds. Video feed rolling." He turned to Tommy. "You ready to light a match?" Tommy grinned. "Born ready." At 8:57, the first barrel was rolled toward the pit. At 8:59, the drone lifted silently into the sky. At 9:00, the storm broke. Rain lashed down as Jack stepped out from the trees, camera mounted on his shoulder. He walked straight toward the workers. "Hey! You can't be here," one of them shouted. Jack didn't stop. "Smile for the world, boys. You're live." The man froze. Up on the ridge, floodlights lit the scene. The drone hovered high, capturing everything. Jack focused on the barrels, unmarked, rusted, leaking. One tipped slightly as a worker lost grip, and a thick, iridescent sludge spilled onto the ground. The mud hissed. Naomi's voice came over the radio. "You've got eyes. Twitter's trending already." Pine Hollow truth. Then headlights. A black SUV screeched up the ridge. Boone climbed out. Wesley Boone wasn't dressed like a CEO tonight. He wore a field jacket, jeans, and gloves, but the rage on his face was unmistakable. "Turn that off," he shouted. Jack kept filming. "Say hello to the people, Boone. They've been waiting." Boone stormed forward. "You think this matters, that little dog and pony show of yours? I own this land. These trucks, these men. I own this state." "Not tonight," Jack said. "Tonight you answer to someone else." Tommy stepped out of the woods, shotgun in hand, not raised, but visible. Boone froze, and then more headlights. 3 SUVs pulled up behind them. Men in EPA jackets. A woman stepped out, sharp suit, sharper eyes. Naomi had pulled through. "Mr. Boone," the agent said, "you're under federal investigation for environmental crimes, obstruction of justice, and human endangerment." Boone sneered. "You can't prove a damn thing." Jack tossed a flash drive at her. "Yes, we can." The agent caught it. "We've got live video, digital logs, and chemical analysis. And we've got witnesses." Boone tried to bolt. Max lunged. The dog tackled him hard, pinning him until 2 agents wrestled him into cuffs. Boone cursed and kicked, but it was over. The workers dropped their barrels. One of them started crying. Jack lowered the camera. The storm began to ease. Naomi stepped beside him. "It's over." Jack shook his head. "Not yet. Not until they clean every drop. Not until people know what really happened." Behind them, the drone circled one last time, capturing the full, raw image: a CEO in cuffs, a poisoned hill, a group of people who refused to stay quiet. Sometimes the only map you need is trust. Jack had said those words to Tommy 2 nights ago, when they stood in the woods trying to decide if any of this could even make a difference. Now, watching Boone being loaded into the back of an unmarked SUV, he felt the weight of that truth. Back at the truck, Naomi received a message from Hannah. The story had gone global, picked up by 4 major outlets, including one in Canada. "You're trending everywhere," she said. And Boone's not the only name coming up. City officials, a judge, even a state senator. all tied to the shell companies. Tommy raised an eyebrow. You knock over one domino. Jack stared out at the still steaming sludge in the exposed pit. You knock them all. They stayed on site for another hour, providing statements helping map coordinates for the EPA hazmat team arriving later that night. Max sniffed every tire and every boot tail stiff. Jack kept an arm around Naomi, who was exhausted, but glowing with quiet resolve. As they drove back into Pine Hollow the next morning, the sky broke into light. Not just clearing clouds, but a full beam of sun cutting through weeks of fog. But the town was different. People stood on porches watching their truck roll past. Some waved. Others stared. A few turned away. The divide was visible now. Some saw Jack as a hero. Others saw him as the man who tore their fragile peace apart. Jack pulled into the driveway of the cabin. Emily came running out, arms open wide. He scooped her up. "Daddy, is it over?" He looked around. The land still reeked of chemicals. The well was still capped. The trees still bore blackened roots. But for the first time in years, someone had answered back. He kissed her forehead and whispered, "Almost." And he knew the fight wasn't done. But the silence was. The sun lingered longer than usual over Pine Hollow that evening, as if hesitant to set on a town newly torn between revelation and resentment. Jack sat on the front porch of the cabin, boots planted in the dust, eyes fixed on the horizon. Emily was inside coloring by candlelight with Naomi. Max dozed at his feet. The EPA had moved in swiftly, sealing off the dump sites, posting legal notices, and beginning the long, ugly process of testing and cleanup. Boone's face had been plastered across national news. His arrest was replayed in slow motion, captured not by surveillance, but by Jack's own hands and Naomi's faith in the truth. And yet, not everyone was grateful. Earlier that day, Jack had gone into town for supplies. Half the store clapped him on the back. The other half whispered behind shelves, angry that the outsider with the camera had wrecked their chances of returning to normal. "You should have left it buried," the butcher had muttered under his breath. Jack hadn't replied, but he had heard. That line haunted him now, curling like smoke in the back of his mind. You should have left it buried. Tommy's truck pulled up just before dusk. The old vet stepped out with a box under one arm and a six-pack in the other. "I brought history," he said, setting the box down, "and beer. For the soul, not the scars." Jack raised an eyebrow. "What's in the box?" Tommy pulled off the lid and handed Jack a stack of yellowed photos and documents. "Stuff I kept from my early days in Pine Hollow," he said. "Turns out Boone's father was doing the same damn thing 30 years ago, dumping barrels under old logging sites. Except back then, nobody had drones. Just missing wildlife and sick kids." Jack flipped through the photos, dead fish floating in streams, aerial shots of clear-cut forest, signed permits stamped with long-forgotten seals. "It was generational," Tommy muttered. "Boone didn't invent corruption. He inherited it." Jack set the documents down, his face hardening. Then this fight was never about just Boone. "Nope," Tommy said, cracking open a beer. "It's about the rot under the town's skin." They drank in silence for a while. Then Naomi stepped out, her eyes tired but alert. She handed Jack a phone. "Hannah wants to talk to you." Jack took it and stepped a few feet away. Hannah's voice came through low but urgent. "The story's not done. We've dug deeper. Those fake companies Boone used, they trace back to a private military firm, one that's done work for the Department of Energy. If Boone was dumping, it wasn't just industrial waste. It might have been experimental." Jack's gut twisted. How bad enough that federal cleanup crews were pulled mid-shift. Orders from high up. Something's being buried again. Jack looked out at the trees, so still, so quiet, yet hiding so much. Then we bring the rest of it to light. There's one more site we didn't get to, Hannah said. It's not on any map. Naomi mentioned it once, some kind of underground storage bunker from the Cold War. Locals call it the root cellar. Jack's breath caught. He'd heard the term before. His grandfather used to say it during stories about the men with black trucks who came in the 60s and left the ground humming. He ended the call and turned back to Naomi. Does the root cellar mean anything to you? Naomi nodded slowly. My dad used to tell stories about it. Said it was deeper than any mine, colder than any cave. They stored things that didn't belong anywhere else. Jack turned to Tommy. Can we find it? Tommy looked grim. Yeah, but we'll need gear. And guts. We've got both, Jack said. But we need one more thing. What's that? Jack's eyes locked on his daughter's drawing, taped to the wall inside the cabin. The one with the skeleton holding the barrel. Proof that what's down there still breathes. The next morning, Jack loaded the truck with new equipment. Thermal cameras, protective suits, radiation tags, old military flashlights. Naomi joined them, pale but determined. She refused to be left behind again. Emily stayed with Maria near the coast, far from what came next. The trail to the root cellar began near an abandoned ranger station 10 miles outside Pine Hollow. The road had collapsed in sections overtaken by moss and time. They left the truck behind and hiked. Max led the way, nose to the ground, ears twitching. After 2 hours, the terrain changed. The air grew denser, colder despite the season. The trees grew taller, more twisted. Jack felt the pressure in his chest tighten, as if the land itself didn't want them there. Finally, they saw it. A rusted steel door, half sunken into the hillside, hidden behind vines, and a rotting wooden sign, Department of Forestry, emergency access only. Tommy pried the door open. The air that escaped smelled of oil and old blood. Naomi gagged. Jack stepped forward, flashlight sweeping the darkness. Concrete steps descended into a tunnel, its walls wet with condensation. Symbols lined the ceiling, faded warnings in both English and Russian. We're not in Pine Hollow anymore, Tommy muttered. They descended slowly. 50 feet, then 100. At last, the tunnel opened into a chamber, and there they found it. Dozens of barrels, stacked like tombstones. Each marked not with a corporate logo, but with a symbol Jack recognized from his years overseas radiological hazard. Some had ruptured. Black sludge pooled on the floor, creeping toward drains that hadn't worked in decades. Jesus, Naomi whispered. They weren't just dumping waste. They were hiding weapons. Jack picked up a logbook sealed in plastic. He flipped through it. The final entry was dated 1994. Material transferred from Hanford site. Storage pending permanent burial. Tommy exhaled sharply. This isn't just a Boone scandal. This is federal. Jack took photos of everything. He filmed Naomi reading the entries, Tommy checking the barrels. Then he uploaded it straight to Hannah. They climbed out before the air could kill them. Back in the truck, Jack looked at the sky. Still clear, but he knew it wouldn't stay that way, because now the truth was radioactive, and it was out. The next chapter would come not from the ground, but from those in power scrambling to deny what had always been there. As they drove back to town, Jack said it out loud for all of them. The deeper the root, the darker the truth, and they hadn't even hit bottom yet. The town square was quiet when Jack returned, too quiet. The video from the root cellar had gone live 12 hours ago, and already his inbox was a war zone. Hannah's exposé was trending on every major platform, dissected by talking heads, government agencies, and conspiracy forums alike. People weren't just shocked by the radiation barrels. They were terrified by what they suggested decades of collusion covered up with concrete and silence. And Pine Hollow had suddenly become ground zero. Jack parked the truck outside the old town hall. Naomi was beside him, silent, her gaze fixed on the growing crowd near the flagpole. A makeshift protest had formed, some people waving signs that read, "Truth Matters," others holding ones that said, "Traitor," with Jack's face crudely printed across them. A sheriff's cruiser idled nearby, engine humming, officers leaning against it with arms crossed. "Ready to walk into that?" Naomi asked. Jack checked his coat, where the flash drive with every file from the root cellar sat zipped in the inner pocket. "We don't have a choice. The fight's in the open now." Tommy met them at the steps. His usual smirk was gone. Town council called an emergency session. People are scared. Boone's gone, but what he buried, that's what they can't face. Jack scanned the crowd. It's not just what he buried. It's who looked away while he did it. They stepped inside. The town hall was packed to the rafters. Locals filled every bench, every aisle. Some of the same faces that had cheered for Boone's arrest now glared like Jack had personally cursed the soil beneath their feet. At the center, the mayor stood behind a splintered podium. Margaret Halloran, 62, widow, old Pine Hollow family. She pounded the gavel. "This meeting is now in session." Jack and Naomi took seats in the front row. Tommy remained standing in the back, arms crossed like a bouncer in a courtroom. "We all know why we're here," Halloran began. 2 days ago, federal investigators descended on our town after Mr. Walker and his associates released footage of alleged hazardous waste stored beneath protected forest land. That video has gone viral. And while we appreciate the concern for our safety, this—" she held up a printout of a headline— "has made Pine Hollow the subject of ridicule and fear." Someone shouted from the crowd, "He brought the feds here." Another, "He poisoned the well with panic." Jack stood. "I didn't poison anything. I exposed the ones who did." Gasps, murmurs. Halloran raised a hand. "Mr. Walker, you'll get your turn." "No," Jack said, stepping forward. "You've had your turn, all of you, for decades. You let Boone build an empire on lies. You let his trucks come in at night. You watched men in hazmat suits walk into the forest and never asked what they were leaving behind. And now you're angry because people finally saw it." A man stood up. "The town plumber, Vince Holloway. You don't get it. We lost contracts, funding. Half the businesses here depended on Boone's payroll." Jack nodded slowly. "And how many kids got sick in the past 5 years, Vince? How many pets died from water contamination?" "You think that's coincidence?" Halloran cut in. "Jack, if what you're saying is true, we'll need more than viral footage. We need legal evidence, documentation." Jack reached into his coat, pulled out the flash drive, and laid it on the podium. Every permit, every shipment, every illegal dump order, including military waste no one was supposed to know about. Gasps again, sharper this time. Even Halloran blinked. Naomi stepped forward. "It's not just about this town. That site, the root cellar, it contains material the Department of Energy lost track of in 1989. You want to talk lawsuits? Wait until the federal government realizes Pine Hollow's been sitting on a ticking bomb." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then from the back, an old man stood. Mr. Kessler, former head of the local timber company. He cleared his throat. Back in '79, we found strange metal crates in Sector 4. Government men came, sealed it up, paid us not to talk. We thought it was nothing. Now I wonder if it started even before Boone." Jack nodded. "This town didn't just bury waste. It buried truth." Halloran rubbed her temples. "So, what do you want, Jack? What's the end game here?" Jack looked around, locking eyes with each person who'd ever doubted him. "I want Pine Hollow to stop pretending. I want full transparency, EPA-led cleanup, federal oversight, real health screenings for every resident, and a new town charter one that ensures no one like Boone ever owns this place again. And if we say no, someone called." Jack didn't flinch. Then the story keeps growing. Bigger press, bigger headlines, national hearings. I'll drag every secret into daylight if I have to. Tommy grinned from the back. "Told you he still had some Marine left in him." Halloran stared at the flash drive. Then slowly, she nodded. "We'll put it to a vote. Right here. Right now." Hands began to rise. More than half went up. The tide was turning. Not fast. Not all the way. But enough. After the session ended, people filtered out quietly. No cheers. No protests. Just silence and maybe a sliver of hope. Outside, Naomi pulled Jack aside. "Emily's asking questions," she said softly. "About where we'll go, what we'll do next." Jack exhaled. "I don't know yet. But I know this isn't over." Naomi smiled faintly. "It never is." As they walked toward the truck, a boy ran up to Jack. 11, maybe 12. Dirty face, thin arms. "Mr. Walker," he asked. Jack kneeled down. "Yeah. My mom says the water's being tested now. She says we might get medicine for my sister." Jack nodded. "You will. I promise." The boy handed him a crumpled drawing of a tree with roots stretching deep underground. Beneath the roots was a barrel cracked open. Above the tree, the words, "Truth always grows back." Jack stood, eyes stinging. In the truck, Tommy was already checking maps. "What are you doing?" Jack asked. "There's still one more site we didn't check. That bunker south of the gorge. The one Boone's records redacted." Jack stared out at the woods. Of course there was one more. There always was. He nodded. "Then we go." Naomi leaned forward. "Jack, you sure?" He started the engine. "We either finish this now or we spend the rest of our lives wondering what we missed." And the truck rolled forward into the night. The wind howled through the gorge like a ghost, remembering its name. Jack stood at the edge of the ravine, staring down at the twisted metal fencing that barely concealed what had once been a Cold War-era communications bunker, now partially collapsed, rusted through, and hidden beneath decades of bramble and denial. Max growled low in his throat. "Yeah," Jack muttered. "I feel it too." Naomi and Tommy approached behind him, suits, zipped masks ready. The sun was just breaking the horizon, casting the sky in bruised shades of violet and orange. Pine Hollow was somewhere behind them, still sleeping or pretending to. Jack took a breath. "This is the last one." "You hope," Tommy said. They made their descent in silence, each step a meditation on every decision, every lie uncovered. Naomi's hand grazed Jack's, once a quiet reassurance more powerful than any speech. The entrance was half buried, but the door still stood, a vault-style hatch sealed with a keypad long corroded. Jack pried it open with a crowbar, and the three of them slipped inside, their headlamps flickering through pitch blackness. The bunker stank of oil and mildew with something acidic beneath it like copper and rot. They moved slowly deeper into the labyrinth of corridors lined with lead-plated walls and broken security panels. They reached the first chamber. Rows of steel barrels, sealed tight. Some labeled U.S. Gov property, others completely blank. On the far wall, graffiti, "No God here, just ash." Jack scanned the room with a Geiger counter. It clicked furiously near the barrels. "Jesus," Naomi whispered. They were storing uncontained radioactive waste less than a mile from the river. Tommy stepped closer to one of the barrels, inspecting a tag barely clinging to its surface. "This ain't just about chemical dumping. This is military testing runoff. Stuff even Hanford wouldn't touch." A loud bang echoed through the chamber. All three froze. Max's ears perked, then silence. They pressed on. Room after room, they documented, took samples, uploaded to a satellite drive Hannah was monitoring in real time. Naomi kept the feed steady, hands trembling, but never faltering. And then they found it. A chamber unlike the others. No barrels, just documents, stacks of them. Some still in sealed crates marked Project Shadow Vein, a name Jack had seen redacted on Boone's original shipping manifests. Inside evidence of illegal transfers, suppressed radiation reports, payments to town officials, photos of children with tumors. One folder simply labeled Exposure Cycle Pine Hollow. Jack felt the breath leave his lungs. This was never just cover-up, he said. They were testing long-term containment failure on real populations. Naomi's voice cracked. "My brother died of leukemia when he was 6. They told us it was genetic bad luck. We believed them." Tommy's jaw clenched. "I fought wars for this country, but I didn't sign up to be its experiment." Jack pulled out his phone, snapped photos of every file, uploaded each one. Then he found a small safe bolted to the floor. Inside was a VHS tape labeled only with a date, 06-1489. He turned it in his hands. "We'll digitize it. It might be the key." They exited the bunker just as clouds rolled in overhead. Not a storm this time, but still dark. Still heavy. Back in town, word of their find spread like fire on dry pine. News trucks pulled into Pine Hollow within the hour. Federal agents returned. This time they weren't pulling out. The bunker was sealed and classified, but not before Jack's files went public. The fallout was immediate. Resignations, arrests, emergency health screenings for every resident. The Department of Energy issued a formal apology and pledged full environmental restoration. But the wounds in Pine Hollow ran deeper than groundwater. Some residents left. Others stayed and joined the cleanup effort. Lawsuits flew like arrows. So did reconciliation efforts. Jack was offered a book deal, a documentary. He turned them down. Instead, he stayed in Pine Hollow, with Naomi, with Emily, and they built something new. 6 months later, Jack stood in the town square, now rebuilt with a community garden and a memorial at its center. A tree had been planted, a single redwood sapling. Beside it, a plaque etched in steel, "Truth takes root, where silence once grew." The townspeople had voted for a new charter, transparency laws, environmental protections. Pine Hollow would never be the same, and that was the point. Tommy opened a small veterans workshop on Main Street. Naomi began teaching science at the local school. Emily drew a new mural in the town library, a girl planting seeds into cracked earth with light beaming down. One afternoon, Jack sat on the porch as Max snoozed in the sun. Naomi joined him with 2 cups of coffee. She handed him one and asked, Do you ever think we went too far? Jack shook his head. No, we didn't go far enough. But we went far enough to start something. She leaned her head on his shoulder, and they watched the town breathe. Breathe truth. Breathe healing. Breathe life. Because in the end, the story wasn't about revenge, or exposure, or even justice. It was about memory, and what we owe each other to remember. That silence is comfortable, but truth is necessary. That communities can rebuild if they choose honesty over habit. And that sometimes the bravest thing isn't speaking up once it's choosing never to go quiet again. The final words Jack wrote in his private journal that night were simple: what we buried came back, not to haunt us, but to heal us. And beneath those words, he drew a single line: roots, twisting, tangling, growing deeper still.